So, and through the
And
Depression?
my husband, he wrote to me all the time. He was in Italy. They traveled from Italy all the way through the mountains and everything. Just as the war was over, they were up at the very top. And he was hoping he would get to see his brother. His brother drove a colonel or someone, a truck, one of the army trucks. But they never got to see each other.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
But I know he told me a lot of interesting things. We planned something that he would start certain paragraphs with certain letters so that I could find out where he was. But those places in Italy didn't mean anything to me. I'd get the letters of each paragraph, I didn't know.
Didn't know. What about the Depression? You lived through the Depression as well?
Well, I was lucky that I lived on a farm, and you never had to worry about food. You canned your own, you had your own animals, we had everything, pigs, cows, everything. And then also an orchard and a garden and everything, so we never had to worry about food.
So what
of course,
was it?
I knew there was a depression, sugar, things like that, and gas for a car. My dad would be able to get gas for his job, but, sugar, if you had a farm or something, you'd get so much that you could use for canning.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember.
Yeah.
I didn't suffer like a lot of people, but I lived about 3/4 of a mile from a children's home. And all these people in the children's home I knew because they all went to school with me. And I knew a lot about their background because of my dad knowing all. I knew a couple different families where the dads had killed the mothers, with a hatchet and different things. And I got to know them just in school, and they were usually rode a school bus. They had to ride a bus to school, but a lot of nice days they could walk home. So I could walk with them, They went right beyond my house, and so I'd walk with them. And I remember one girl's name was Merry Christmas, whatever her last name was, I don't remember, but her name was Merry Christmas. And there was one family, there were about a lot of them. I don't remember how many, but there was one baby there, and then one about 3 or 4 years old. And when the older girls got out of high school, they were ahead of me. I remember they went to Akron and Cleveland, Ohio, to work places during the war. And a couple different times I saw them get off a bus there in Caddis. They had come to visit their younger brothers and sisters that were still in the children's home.
Yeah.
So I knew quite a people that had rough lives.
Yeah. After the war's over?
After the war was over, I went home. I graduated, and I went home. My dad had been in he had been in a bad accident and been hurt. He wasn't driving, but he was hurt. So I decided, well, I'd stay home. I wouldn't get a job right away because I could do the driving and do everything. Well, the middle of that year, there was an opening for a school teacher in Scio, Ohio. So I went there and taught the rest of the year. Then I got married. My husband by that time was going to Ohio State. I wasn't married to him then. We got married, and then I went to Columbus, and I worked in the graduate school office at Ohio State for a semester. And then I could teach school, so I applied for a job right outside the county, right outside Columbus. And I went to teach at Lockbourne Air Base, right out of Columbus. It was a school district that was right near the air base. And it was one of these schools, the first time that I knew that there were segregated schools. We didn't have any black kids in this kid. But they had at Lockbourne Air Base, they had the Army, they were separated, the white from like my husband was a computer operator where you shot guns for the Black Army. They did. But they would fight, they had the white army too, but they were close to a black army when they were in Italy, and they would do fire direction for this black army. And the funniest thing that I ever remember that he told me, they got word, their captain, who was in charge of their fire direction, told them they were to fire at this one house, that they had seen people, Germans going in this house. So anyway, they wrote down there were characters. The black men had told them, if they're in there, they know that we know there's in there. So my husband and this other man that worked fire direction, they wrote that down. And when the captain came back, he said, "What the hell? If they's in there, they knows that we knows they's in there." But anyway, they had a real good man that was a real good captain over their fire direction. They all liked him.
Yeah.
Anyway, when I was I was at Lockbourne Air Base. There were no blacks in this school district where I taught. Because there were no blacks living in that area. But when I lived in Caddis, we had a black school, grade school. And once they got it, we had a lot of people that had come, from the Civil War, they'd come to Caddis. And when they got in high school, they went to high school with me. Okay. So we all, they were in the band and everything. Mm. But until they got through the 8th grade, they weren't in school with me. But I knew all of them because the blacks, there were 2 black men that worked on our farm all the time. Blady and Nitch. And I even drove them home and everything. I knew them well. Uh-huh. But so I probably knew the black people as well as a lot of the white people, living on a farm like that.
So what were the early marriage years like? Fine.
My husband was going to Ohio State, and I'm working either at Ohio State or I'm teaching. Okay. So until he then when he graduated, we both taught in the same school district until he was ready to go to get his master's degree. Then when he got his master's degree, I went to work for Goodyear Tire and Rubber in Akron as a secretary. I could do both. I could teach or I could work in an office. So that's until he graduated, got his master's in speech and hearing therapy. Then we moved to Cambridge, Ohio. I got a job there. Then after he did his first speech and hearing therapy there, we moved to Canton. He taught as a speech and therapist in Canton, and I taught in the county, school district. Okay. So we were in schools. And then I worked in a smaller school district, and then eventually I'm trying to think. I wanted to move into town close where he worked in Canton. I wanted to work in that area. So there was a new school opening. It was called Glenwood High School. It was a suburb of Canton. So I applied there, and I was one of the first teachers in that high school. And it just opened. Okay. And I stayed in that area forever.
Forever. Okay.
Until I retired, right.
Okay. What about